Hello and welcome to Politics here on France 24. For years, we have heard here in France the expression Franco-German couple, mostly to explain its role at the core of the European Union project. But the couple is also becoming a political one with Nicolas Sarkozy and Angela Merkel, as both conservative leaders are joining hands not only to salvage the euro or to berate Greece, but also to boost Sarkozy's re-election bids. Is the German strategy a good one for Nicolas Sarkozy? Is Angela Merkel taking too many risks if Sarkozy's rival, François Hollande, ends up being president? So with me to discuss the issue here today is Françoise Quignot, who is the vice president of the Association of Financial Journalists here in France. Also on the set, Yves Bertoncini, who is the Secretary General of the Notre Europe think tank. And last but not least, Mathieu Douaret, who is with the Ipsos polling institutes. So on Monday, we had a very unusual show on French public and German public televisions, an interview of Nicolas Sarkozy, Angela Merkel, and he had interesting things to say.
It's a sight that the French public has become accustomed to. Nicolas Sarkozy standing side by side with his German counterpart, Angela Merkel. The main topics at the 14th joint Franco-German cabinet meeting were Greece and Syria, but attention was focused on Merkel's vocal support for Sarkozy's bid for re-election.
Whatever President Sarkozy decides to do, we are part of the same political force. In the past, he gave me his support, so it's only natural that I support him too during his campaign.
It may seem unusual for a foreign leader to endorse Sarkozy's candidacy for the presidential race, especially when he himself hasn't officially announced it. Socialist frontrunner François Hollande, who led Sarkozy by 8 percentage points in the latest opinion poll, scoffed at the German endorsement.
Mrs. Merkel is perfectly entitled to support Nicolas Sarkozy. I'd say she's taking on a difficult task. It won't be easy to convince the French. The fact that Mr. Sarkozy needs Mrs. Merkel's backing says it all.
The support is mutual. Sarkozy has made it clear he's on board with Germany in battling the current economic crisis and hinted France should emulate the German economic model.
It doesn't mean copying each other. It means we'll go along the same path. When someone who's your friend and whom you admire tells you she supports your actions, it's a pleasure.
Backing Sarkozy's presidential bid may be in Merkel's best interest. Analysts say she fears a new left-wing French government might oppose the Europe-wide austerity plans she's pushed for.
Françoise Quignot, what do you make of this German strategy and Angela Merkel coming to say on public television that she is backing Nicolas Sarkozy?
Well, it has been a strange thing for French people because I think that for French opinion, I don't know if you do agree, I think that the German politics is really a punitive one. For German people, to have rigor is something that, like discipline, is a good thing. For French people, when you speak about Germany, they always say rigor, and that's for French people austerity and punitive. So it was a strange balance between the two head of governments because she was saying, okay, we want to have some growth. That's the first time she was speaking about growth. And Sarkozy was saying, we have to have a treaty on fiscal rigor. So it was a strange balance between both of them. But I think that they do have some importance to have the other one on his, with him or with her.
Yves Bertoncini, were you surprised at the degree to which Angela Merkel is supporting Nicolas Sarkozy? Just a couple of days before this, one member of her party, the CDU, came at a rally of the conservatives here and publicly said that many good things about Nicolas Sarkozy and many bad things about François Hollande. It's rather surprising.
It's a bit surprising, but from the start, she needs Nicolas Sarkozy not to be alone in the photo. You know, Nicolas Sarkozy is using the fact that Angela Merkel, who is the hegemon today in Europe, Germany is the hegemon, Angela Merkel needs partners. So it's Nicolas Sarkozy, and in the last period, it was Mario Monti coming on stage. So from the start, Angela Merkel needs Nicolas Sarkozy's presence and partnership. She even needs Nicolas Sarkozy's commitment to promote this so-called fiscal compact Françoise Crignos talked about, because it's for the first time a firm commitment from the French authorities to respect fiscal discipline, budgetary discipline, which is not in our, if not in our culture as a French, in our practices of the last decade at least. But it is true that going further, saying, well, I'll support him as a member of the same party, which is the European People's Party, meaning the party of the conservators, to be clear. It's a step further, but it's consistent too with Angela Merkel's position, because she said today EU affairs, it's not any longer foreign affairs. It's all about domestic policy, domestic politics, domestic choices. And so in this respect, she's quite consistent by saying, well, my natural partner is Nicolas Sarkozy, and I will support him for his campaign, even if he's not candidate
Yet.
Yet.
There's even talk that she might participate in a campaign rally, which would be unprecedented. Mathieu Douaret, is this a good thing for Nicolas Sarkozy? Obviously, Nicolas Sarkozy has asked Angela Merkel to show support, and he has been touting the German model for weeks and weeks now. I mean, there must be something to it.
Yeah, there is no reason to believe that Nicolas Sarkozy's mind was focused on what the public opinion would immediately think about it, because I think people are, for the moment, very cautious about this aspect. The real danger in the months to come is in what Nicolas Sarkozy said, which shows the asymmetrical aspect of this relationship. He said, someone whom you admire supports you. Admiration and support, this is not balanced. So the real danger, the risk for him is that Germany appears as the real leader of France, and that the French people doesn't have it, in fact, has got no choice at the general election, and that, in fact, it is Germany who endorses the French president. And this is not acceptable, of course, from a public opinion point of view. So the real danger is here.
Do you think that there is indeed a risk that even within the Gaullist camp, Sarkozy's camp, some people might say, well, you know,
it's a little bit too much.
It's a little bit too much Germany. I mean, you know, this is France after all.
Yes, and I think that there are two things. From the French part, I think that we're going to know more and more on the so-called Germany's model, the economic model. It's not a so beautiful model. It's marvelous on exports. It was good on growth, but this year will not be a very good year. You know, the IMF projects some growth around 0.3% in Germany this year. That's really peanuts. And in France, 0.2%. So that's not brilliant. So I'm sure that the socialists are more and more going to say, look at the German model. Look at the dark face of the social model. Look to the mini jobs, where you have many Germans who are earning only, I don't know, something like 400.
There's no minimal wage in Germany, contrary to France. So.
Yes. So unemployment is not so big than in France, but many German people earns only 400 euros a month. And you have the trade union saying, okay, we've been very calm, we didn't have a bigger salary for 2 years, and now we want a little bit bigger salary. So you will have a year which won't be so easy for Mrs. Merkel. And at the end of the day, when elections will come in Germany, it's not so sure that she will gain with the same coalition. So she won't be in so bright position.
Is there maybe also a risk by Angela Merkel? We've seen that she has angered the French socialists. The socialists have made it known that they've asked for a meeting between Angela Merkel and François Hollande, who's going to be the candidate. Why do you risk burning the bridges especially if the polls are correct in France, and we can see the latest, one of the latest polls clearly showing François Hollande as the winner, not only in the first round, but also in the second round against Nicolas Sarkozy. I mean, why would you risk that?
Well, I mean, we have to separate the very short run and then the medium run. On the short run, Angela Merkel needs to have a firm commitment by the French authorities to have more stable finances, more stable public finances. So that is the objective of the so-called fiscal compact. And she sees that Nicolas Sarkozy is okay for this. He wants to endorse, to sign this fiscal compact, which will be ratified only after the election by the parliament. But at least
new parliament as well.
A new parliament. But at least she sees Nicolas Sarkozy saying, okay, I made my job. I took commitments, which can be costly for Nicolas Sarkozy in France and in general. So he did this. He said he admired Angela Merkel's and I would say the economic German model. I mean, this is not that natural, because if you remember well, in the past, Nicolas Sarkozy a bit, and even Christine Lagarde once very clearly had criticized
the finance minister.
Yes, she had criticized in an interview in the Financial Times the German growth model, saying, you know, if we were all in Europe doing the same, meaning with low wages, no support for consumption, I mean, the situation would be even worse. So there is kind of German so-called egoism. So these critics came also from the right. And what Angela Merkel can see today is that Nicolas Sarkozy is quiet on this. He admires for very pragmatic reasons. And maybe the left, as François Scrigneux told us, would be more critics on this. So Nicolas Sarkozy takes this. On the very short run, it's very good for Angela Merkel. On the medium run, she will see. She will adapt. Because, of course, if she was to attend a meeting of Nicolas Sarkozy, if she was to refuse to welcome François Hollande in Berlin, that would be a step further. But this has not been done at the moment. So we need to wait to see what will happen.
Right. Mathieu Douaret, do you think that the public opinion here in France has a good image of Angela Merkel, that she is someone who can at least be seen as a leader, and maybe a leader who is very different from Nicolas Sarkozy? And there is the contrast, not only in terms of which country they represent, but their character.
I'm not sure. I think they've got a rather good opinion of Germany, because they are very conscious.
The French, you mean?
Yeah, the French people. Because of the products, because of the cars, of the hi-fi materials. But they think Germany is both an efficient country, and they still think it is a fair country. But if the campaign goes on with, in fact, a platform that is, we'll do the same as Germany on Sarkozy's side, and the socialists who are thus pushed into saying, well, let's look at the German model, the so-called model, and let's look at the reality, the facts behind the statistics, then the people in France could realize that the picture is less rosy than it first appeared. And maybe that might even fuel the socialist campaign at no cost for them, because they would have just to criticize Angela Merkel's politics as well as Sarkozy's. And Sarkozy would not have any option for the future, because the only future he would propose would be to do the same as Merkel, who has not... has got a good ratings in her own country, but she is not at all poised for re-election in polls in Germany, because she has virtually lost
elections
her
are
majority.
in the fall of 2013.
Yeah.
Right?
And if the model was so popular in its own country, okay, everything would be rosy. But Germans are more and more fed up of efforts.
Just you wanted to react quickly?
Yeah, just to add an additional piece to this to the broad picture, because of course this is also a risk for Nicolas Sarkozy. But this is not a couple. I mean, it's not about based on romance. Huh? It's common interest.
Never.
So I mean, Nicolas Sarkozy's game is to appear as a head of state together with Angela Merkel, who is the hegemon, a leader in Europe today. So to insist on the contrast with his main opponent, François Hollande, was a major weakness is supposed lack of experience. But what is striking when you look at the two countries is that Nicolas Sarkozy insists on this point very much, on the fact that he is a head of state facing a very, very tough crisis. Whereas in Germany, on the contrary, Angela Merkel said, of course the situation is difficult, but we need to keep quiet. The crisis is not that high. We have time to solve the situation. Will take time. So in this political game, of course, Sarkozy will insist even more on the fact that he stands at Angela Merkel's level, maybe together with Mario Monti sometimes, but they are the leaders of Europe. So to really strike the difference with his opponent.
Yes. Just quickly, François Scrugneau, do you think that eventually, if Angela Merkel see that the wind is still blowing in behind François Hollande, she will very pragmatically say, okay, bye-bye Nicolas Sarkozy, hello François Hollande?
I'm sure, as always, we've always seen that between French and Germany. At the beginning, can you remember the first thing that Schröder made is to go to London? Then you had this couple, French and German couple, who said, okay, we have to go on because we have some interest in the construction of Europe. And it has been the same with Sarkozy. He went first to England and then came back to Germany because it's the core of the construction of Europe. So I'm sure that pragmatism will always be in the French-German couple, but it's always difficult. It's not romantic.
Okay. Thank you very much to all of you. We'll see how the Franco-German couple continues to fare as the election campaign enters its crucial phase right here in France. Thank you for watching this edition of Politics on France 24.